Okay, so our meatballs have been cooking for about 30 minutes. We started some water and it's now reached a rolling boil. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and put our pasta in. I have a 2-pound package of spaghetti here. I'm going to use approximately half of it. Now, while the water is still boiling, I'm going to put some salt in it. This is to taste, so it really just depends on your preference. But now is the right time to add it. Okay. Alright, and as I mentioned, I'm going to use about half of the package. So, cooking up the spaghetti, I'm going to pull out about half. To break the spaghetti apart so that it's not so long. Let's see, was that about half? Maybe just a little bit more. Drop a couple of random pieces here. We're going to cook this al dente, which takes about 8 minutes. Now, this is a non-stick pot, but we're going to move the pasta around a bit so that it doesn't stick to the bottom. And a few years ago, I picked up something called a pot watcher. I put it in with the pasta and keep the pot from overflowing, but still allow everything to boil. So we're going to stir that occasionally. While we're waiting for that to stir, I'll show you what else I have here. I pulled out our thermometer. This is going to be our meat thermometer that we will test the meatballs with in approximately 15 to 20 minutes. We want it to get to 145 internal temperature on the meatball. Now, this thermometer works that you have to submerge it about that far to get the correct temperature. And we may not be able to do that with these meatballs. We're going to try, but if that doesn't work, we'll cut them in half and we'll visually inspect the interior of the meatball to make sure that they reached and they got done all the way through. We also have a pasta scooper. We have a colander in the sink waiting for us to be able to drain the pasta when it's done. I have over here a plate with a fork and a knife so that I can cut one of the meatballs in half and make sure that it's done and take a small sample. And also, as a garnish, the recipe called for Parmesan cheese and pesto sauce. So I have cut some shavings of Parmesan cheese off of this block to put on top of the meatball once it's on the plate with the spaghetti, and we'll also be garnishing it with some pesto sauce. So we've got a few things ready. So it's going to take a few minutes to boil, so just kind of hang with me while that happens. You can see that the pasta is rehydrating. This is dried pasta. If you have fresh pasta, it may not take as long. And our meatballs are still in the oven. They have, looking at the clock, they have about 15 more minutes. 15 minutes will make a total of 50 minutes that they have been in the oven. As I mentioned, the meatballs were a little larger on the large side, so I think that cooking them closer to the 50-minute mark is going to be the right, to get us to the right temperature. And we want to make sure that pork is done. Pork can carry parasites, it can, and obviously, all raw meat can carry bacteria, so we want to make sure that it is fully cooked before we serve it. So very important that we get it to that right internal temperature of 145. Okay. So our pasta has been cooking for approximately 4 minutes, I think. So we're about halfway there. And what I normally do to see if it's done, of course it's not, because as I mentioned it will take about 8 minutes, is I take a piece out and test it. I sample a piece and then just bite into it and see if it's the right consistency. And that's how I know that the pasta is where I want it to be. Now others may have other methods, but that's what I do. Some of the consistency will vary if you're using whole wheat pasta. It tends to be a little stiffer. It may take a little bit longer to get it to that al dente point, or they also sell pastas that have vegetables mixed in with the pasta. Again, that may affect the cooking time. So you just have to experiment and figure out what works best for you to get it to the right consistency that you like with your pasta. We waited to put our pasta in until the last 20 minutes of the meatballs cooking, because we want everything to be done about the same time. We don't want the pasta sitting around waiting while the meatballs are cooking, because wet pasta will stick together, and that can affect the consistency and the taste and the presentation. So pasta can be more difficult to reheat, and get the same consistency. So we really want everything to be done about the same time. Now some people will put oil in the water, or they will put a bit of oil in the pasta once they put it into the colander. I don't like to do that personally, because I think it makes the pasta a little greasy, and I don't like that. But if you put a small amount of olive oil, that might be okay, and it probably wouldn't affect the taste. And people, some chefs do that in order to ensure that the pasta will not stick together. I find that if my pasta is beginning to stick together, running hot water over it will solve that problem, and sort of alleviate the stickiness and keep the temperature where it needs to be without, adding oil. So I think the only reason you may need to add oil is if you had pasta in a dish sitting and you would have to serve it over, a number of minutes, and you didn't have access to hot water where you could use the water to break it up. So that's why some people, when they're serving larger groups, they may add a little bit of oil to it. It's beginning to get the right consistency. You can see how it's drooping over the spoon. It's no longer stiff. If I can look at it and see it's not quite there. It needs about 20 more minutes or so. This is a non-stick pot. I prefer to use non-stick just because pasta, again, can be very sticky, and it can easily stick to the bottom and burn. That's why I'm using this wooden spoon to stir it. If you think about it, if you mix water and flour together, that makes a paste. So it makes sense that the starch in the pasta is very sticky, because this is basically made out of flour. So once you add water to it, the starch starts to come out, and that creates sort of a glue. So it makes perfect sense that pasta would stick to itself and stick to pots. So again, that's why some people may add a little bit of oil to prevent that. it's quite there, but I'm going to take just a single piece and put it on my plate here. I'm going to let it cool off for just a minute. Still a little bit chewy. So based on that, I think it needs maybe 2 more minutes. And I'm also going to add just a tad more salt. Don't add too much, but again, this is going in the water, so some of it will go into the pasta, but not all of it. It's a good way to infuse a little salt, but not adding too much. And you can see that my pot watcher, it's doing its job because the pot is not overflowing, but yet it's continuing to stay at that rolling boil that we want it at to cook the pasta. Not sure what the pot watcher is made out of, but it's a good little item to have in the kitchen to prevent having accidents where you have hot boiling water overflowing the pot. And the pot watcher that I have used, it's some type of pottery / ceramic material, can go through the dishwasher, so I sanitize it in between uses. Maybe 1 more minute and then we'll try another sample. Go. That up. Pasta seems to be the right consistency, so I'm going to turn the burner off. I'm going to take this over to the sink where the colander is sitting, and we will pour it directly into the colander. And there's our pot watcher. We'll take off that in a minute. You can see that a few pieces of stuff. Get those before they. On the back burner. Turn this off, and I will remove the pot watcher. All right, now's the time that we need to check our meatballs. All right, so at this point they have been in 45 minutes, so halfway between the 40 and the 50 period. Move this over, and I think I'm going to slide everything over so you can see a little better. Okay, I'm going to slide it here. Be very careful because this aluminum foil is hot. All right, ooh, the meatballs are looking good. let's see if this temperature will work. And as I mentioned, it may not, because it might not go far enough in, but we're going to give it a shot. All right, so it's quickly going up to, we've got to 140, 150, 160. All right, wonderful. So it did work, and we know that the internal temperature is what it should be. So put that off to the side. Now it's time to prepare a plate. So I've got my plate. Grab some pasta. We'll make a bed of pasta. Okay, and it is beginning to stick. So this is what I often do with the pasta. Make sure the water is very hot. And that will loosen it right up. There we go. Alright, so now we've got a nice bed of pasta. We're going to oops. There we go. Alright. I'm going to put maybe 2 meatballs on the plate. Forgot to grab a spoon, so I'm going to do that really quickly. Oops, a little bit of a mess there on the side. We'll clean that up. We'll put our meatballs a little closer together. There we go. Right. Grab a paper towel. Just clean up the edge of that plate there. Looks a little nicer. Oops. Move this piece of spaghetti off to the side. Okay. All right. Now, presentation. I'm going to add a couple of pieces of Parmesan cheese and a little pesto sauce on the side. Okay, and that's what it looks like. Just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to take one of the meatballs. We're going to cut it in half. You can see that it's done all the way through. So, get that on there. All right, so that is how you cook Italian country meatballs. So enjoy. Thank you.